Hello and welcome to the Long Talk here on New Zealand Sports Radio. And today I've got a cracker because one of the sports that is kicking off first is going to be netball. And today I get to chat with Phil Vyver, who is the CEO of the Northern Zone and CEO of Northern Mystics. How are you doing, sir?
Very good, thank you.
And so let's go way back then. And what is your first sporting memory?
First sporting memory, well, probably the All Whites in the early 80s is front of mind when you ask that question. As a young kid at that time, that was a pretty exciting period for New Zealand sport that I remember.
So that would have been Road to Spain, kind of?
Yeah. I guess 81, around that sort of area into 82 would be my first recollection of really getting in behind sport in some way. And then, through that, watching All Black matches, that sort of stuff. I had a wide and varied interest in sport right from a young kid that I've sort of kept up right through to today, really.
Yes, and we'll see the range of sports you've worked in as well. So you're another one, hot Milo in front of the fire, watching All Blacks tests in South Africa and Europe, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And then getting out and trying to replicate it myself. But I always played soccer early on, and cricket were probably my two first loves, if you like. Especially cricket was probably the main thing that I really gravitated to as a youngster. Love watching Martin Crowe play, and sort of carried on from there with my sport involvement.
Did you play to any kind of level? I mean, you see, you're from. I see you at Palmerston North, so you're from that part of the woods.
Yeah. So it was probably when I went to, for some reason, my parents decided to send me off to boarding school when I was, standard 4, what's that, year 6 these days. So I went to Huntley School just out of Palmerston North, and really took to sport there heavily, cricket especially. Matthew Sinclair was at the school at that time, so he and I were in the same teams growing up. Although he quickly advanced a lot further than I did. The highest cricket was kind of my peaking sporting achievement, I suppose, where I made a few rep teams and that sort of thing. But nothing notable. I've played with a couple. Jacob Oram was another one who was. I think I was in my last year of high school, and he might have been in his first or second, and we were in the same team. So he was always a standout performer, even as a early teenager.
And at that level, having an all rounder like that in the side helps, obviously, bowling and batting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But you obviously knew pretty early on that you wanted to work in the sports industry because that's what your degree's in up here in when I went up in University of Waikato. So and then there's a bit of a gap according to LinkedIn. I've got you. I'm guessing you went for an OE after that.
I spent a bit of time. I worked for Manukau City Council for a while, doing some in their recreation sort of area, doing a lot of. I used to teach preschool gymnastics and after school programs and all sorts of stuff like that. Bit of a stint at Sport Bay of Plenty, and then a couple of OE kind of periods of time through those years as well. Always ended up back in some sport role somewhere along the lines, either through council or various sporting bodies over the years.
But so it seems you cut teeth in leisure centres there over in the UK, working in London, getting people down leisure centres, getting people active outdoors. I guess grassroots sports, but not team sports, so individual sports there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was all about. I guess whether it's just the way it's worked out, but I've always had, I guess, a real connection with sport and the benefits that it provides, and wanting to share that with other people, I suppose, in terms of there's the health and fitness side of things, but I think it's actually more the social connection and community development that sport plays that's kind of important for me.
And then and kind of out of no explanation, we've talked cricket, rugby, we've talked football, a bit of rugby, a bit of gymnastics, and then out of the blue you decide that you'll make a career in bowls for over a decade.
Yes, I know. It's one of those things that it didn't intend to be like that, but that's obviously how it ended up. I was on my way back from my OE, traveling with Africa on the way home, and I guess a few weeks out from getting home, I thought, I better start looking for a job, and just happened to be something that was available at the time, and they impressed me in what they had to sort of offer, etc. And so I took the role, and one thing led to another, and I was there for quite a few years. So really enjoyed my time with bowls. Different sport to what I'd been in before, but equally, has all the challenges that any other sport faces.
Yeah, and so I've talked to a lot of different sports, Wacker Armour, snow sports, canoe racing, and bowls is one of those over the last few weeks. And it has an image of being a retired person's sport, and yet me talking to the administration side of it, I found them to be one of the most dynamic actually administrations out there, which surprised me. So they are on actually running the sport. It's a very good sport to cut your teeth, because I think they do a lot of there's a lot of imagination there to try things.
As well. Definitely. And my time there, I really tried to push the envelope, introduce different things, different competitions. We ran a televised event that hadn't been done before, just to try and change things up a bit. It's still primarily a retired person's sport, and that has its challenges in itself when you're trying to drive through change. Not always that easy, but you get some wins and try and make a difference.
Yep. And also, I guess, and we'll probably come on to this as being one of the challenges I think you're going to have for netballers, but the actual clubs with club rooms that can generate some of their own cash and that can actually run themselves to a degree. And I guess when we get onto netball, I think that's going to probably be one of your issues around funding for that. But then 6 months with archery as well. So into I guess that's your first Olympic sport you're involved with.
Yeah, it is, and that was I really enjoyed that 6 months with archery. Great bunch of people to work with. Completely different setup in that they had a very limited national body. I was the first general manager that they'd ever employed or contracted. Previous to that, it was just volunteer people. No kind of regional setup of any great note, and then a bunch of clubs. And even then, the affiliation structure was you as an individual deciding to join or not join Archery New Zealand directly. So there was no, sort of formalised structure underneath all that, like there would be in most other sports. So that was different and interesting to deal with, and presents a set of challenges that sport faces around, trying to fund itself. And being an Olympic sport, you've got people who obviously have desires to reach the Olympics, and that costs a lot of money. And so there's a lot of dedication from those archers to self-fund, get themselves over to largely Europe where the tournament is, and sometimes into Asia. So those athletes make massive commitments to try and make the Olympics, and things were looking good for the first time in quite a few years for New Zealand to have some archers representing New Zealand at the Olympics, and then obviously hopefully they still do next year, but they've got a bit more time to practice, I guess, and build their skills and try and qualify for the 2021 now.
Yes, and a difference, I say, a different challenge in archery, because being that high performance piece, the high performance funding obviously is linked to success and your medal chances. So it's kind of like, how do we build up that success to get the funding in the first place? It's sort of chicken and egg side, and then you've got a separate grassroots piece that's quite separate, sort of funding wise.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, in New Zealand, a minor sport, it's really challenging. And just to try and break into some of those different funding opportunities, is hard work for that sport. And as you say, unless you start winning medals or getting in the top, 10 sort of placings on world events, then the funding set up through high performance sport is not available. And so, yeah, it's a challenge, and those athletes have got to be committed to funding a large chunk of, the costs of getting over to Europe and competing in some of those events to test themselves against the world's best to improve their own standards.
But from a personal point of view, as you say, a blank slate pretty much for you to work with. So fantastic from that challenge, from that point of view. Your first role as a national GM rather than a regional GM. Again, really exciting personal challenge.
It was. And I guess it was only a part-time role, and that was, from my own personal perspective, I guess a little bit limiting. And so hence the reason I wasn't there as long as I perhaps otherwise would have been. But really enjoyed working at that national level, having that different experience of working through into Sport New Zealand directly, and trying to help those athletes achieve on an international stage rather than just a local regional kind of forum.
Now, I've got a funny feeling we've got a fascinating story to come up now in this piece. But when did you apply for the CEO role at for Northern Zone?
So the process started before Christmas. I was approached to see if I'd be interested in putting my name in the hat, and I thought, that sounds like a good opportunity. I was attracted by. I've always had an involvement with netball. I've got two daughters who play, and I've played indoor netball and always followed it. As I said earlier, I'm just a general sports lover. But the appeal of a matching community sport with a semi-professional franchise team was, really appealing to me. So went through the process, lucky enough to get the role, started early March.
Well, hang on, before we get to the starting, when did you actually get sort of, when did you actually get told you had the role?
Would have been late January.
So late January. So we're in late January. Yeah. COVID isn't a thing yet. There's some sort of rumours about something happening in China, but hey, from a New Zealand point of view, from a netball point of view, it's not really a thing yet. We're walking into the season as the world champions. Everything's looking like, hey, this is our big season. We need a big push. We want to make a massive dent this year. What were kind of your goals at that point before they all went to pieces, I guess?
Yeah. So for me, it was about. I guess the two aspects to it. One, from a Mystics point of view, I thought, hey, this is a great opportunity. They had a great roster lined up, ready to go. I could see they'd done a lot of work pre-season. They'd had a really successful tournament at the Super Club in Nelson in December, where they finished second to the Australian team that came over, so the top performing New Zealand team at that tournament. So I thought from that perspective, is a great opportunity for a great season for the Mystics. Mm-hmm. And I thought, hey, there's a real opportunity here to make a difference off the back of the Netball World Cup. Grassroots sport, young people are going to be interested in getting into netball, and so I thought, what a great time.
Did you have kind of like, okay, Mystics, we're going to want to we with that win, with all these positions, we're looking at sort of increasing our crowd numbers by 30% or 20%, or did you have a kind of, right, we've got a growth goal there around sort of Mystics fan base?
Yeah, I didn't have, in my personal mind before starting, I didn't have sort of specific numbers around that, but certainly that was a key part of what we were hoping to achieve. Crowd numbers had sort of dwindled in previous years for various reasons, and so I thought we've got potential here this season, and what can I do to try and enhance what we're doing to attract more spectators, more fan engagement, etc. And they were the sort of the conversations that I led off with various people, when I first started the role. So
so one side we're looking at successful performance season, but also successful fan base engagement season, and then on the grassroots side.
Yeah, grassroots is really, I guess, first and foremost the numbers game in terms of trying to get more young girls, but boys as well, into playing netball. Really supporting the clubs and centres that at grassroots level that really get stuck in and provide the ability for people to play. And the zone's role to support that structure and to try and boost the number of people and the appeal of the sport, across the different parts of the region.
So where does your zone reach? How far down does it reach?
So we're from basically the top of the North Island down to Pukekohe, Waiuku, sort of in the southern part of Auckland. So there's 17 centres that run the grassroots netball across that region.
Yep. And
then below that, Waikato Bay Plenty take over in the next part of the country.
And so in those 17 centres, they engage with the various sort of secondary schools and primary schools in that area as well, or is that, or do you leave them to themselves?
No, so they have a role to play with that. Yes, so it's I guess netball's slightly different structure, and it's sort of a 4-tier, but the facility base is through the centres. Clubs, most clubs are more or less a virtual kind of entity where they don't have their own. Some do, but generally speaking, they don't have their own facilities. They come in, they set themselves up, organised teams come in and play their games at the local centre, and then go away again. So slightly different model compared to other sports where it's the club has sort of a facility, more of a facility base if you compare it to a rugby or cricket or that sort of thing.
Or bowls.
Bowls, correct, yeah.
I've talked with Volleyball New Zealand, and they talk about having to sort of use council facilities and trying to get enough courts in a place to hold a tournament. So you've decided so you actually have your own facilities that aren't council owned, that you own yourselves, and that are all so you can have the size you can afford, kind of thing. That
the facilities are largely council owned or some other kind of community set up. I'm not aware of anyone that sort of owns the land as such, but they tend to be reasonably well set aside for netball, particularly the outdoor courts anyway, through the winter season. And then quite often they might have a relationship with other sports, tennis, for example, where tennis might come in and use the courts, through the summer season type thing. So the facilities tend to be, reasonably exclusive for netball through that winter season.
So no fights. So because over in the UK, you'd be fighting with five-side football. For a lot of that, for example.
Yeah. No, not quite. And I guess a lot of the outdoor courts are still, and this is another subject to work through at some point. It's still largely sort of your concrete based. So I don't know if the five-a-side guys want to get their knees torn up on some of those, courts that the netballers play. And certainly the indoor space is a lot more like it would be for volleyball and basketball. The indoor space is a lot more contested, and so netball has to get in the queue for that along with those other sports.
Yep. Just a kind of thought that sprung to mind, you might want to put large canopies over the top just to keep the rain off, but anyway.
Love to. If you can find us a pot of gold, we'll be into that.
So those are your goals. So some of the challenges around that sort of. So do you see? So from a centre point of view to start off with, obviously less use with the COVID impacts. Any concerns around the finances there for the centres out of this, or do you think, or being council or community run, that they're going to be probably pretty stable?
Yeah, I guess it's a bit of a mixture. Some, because of the way they've kind of operated in the previous years, have got reasonable amount of reserves, and so they're a little bit protected. Whilst they've had a loss of income, they're a little bit protected. Others not so much. So it is quite a case by case basis with the centres, and there's definitely an impact across everybody, all the centres, in that we haven't been able to play. This would normally be right in the heart of a netball season. And whilst there's plans in place to get things underway, that hasn't happened yet. And so there's, a definite loss of income for the netball system. And centres are feeling that at the moment. We have a mix of, purely voluntary organisations that run the netball through to some of the bigger centres that will have several staff employed. And so obviously there's different impacts depending on how they're structured, but no one's been left out, if you like, of the impact of what's happening without being able to play netball through what would normally be April, May, real stuck into the middle of a season.
Talking with Cameron Bell who's the Northland Rugby CEO, and he was saying that one of their problems of kind of juggling the season or pushing back the season is going to be for their grassroots team, is obviously they're going to end up competing with cricket, etc. for those grass pitches. It sounds like you'll be able to shift your season later and not have as much contention issues, and should be able to, so you can sort of take your how long the season is, 3 or 4 months, and say, right, and so just physically move it by 3 months, or will you have to actually rearrange everything?
Yeah, we're reasonably lucky in that regard. So most will be able to shift. Like a normal winter season would finish in sort of August, but then that would follow up with some kind of representative play and different tournaments at secondary school level, etc., that are held through sort of September. Right. A lot of those tournaments have now been cancelled for the year. The national club championship type events, national secondary schools, national under-18s, and then the flow on from that, underneath that, is various regional tournaments are then cancelled. So we're able to shift the normal club season into that September window where that type of thing would traditionally have been played. So what we're hoping is that if we can start by sort of mid-June, we'll be able to run through, and there's always exceptions to this, but run through to the end of September, or the end of term 3 from a school point of view. And so they'll still get a 10 to 12 week kind of winter season versus probably a 14 to 18 week would be normal. So they'll still get, it'll still be a reduced season for most, but all things considered, still a reasonable length season to be played.
So whilst there's an impact, there is some light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, and
it's good to see.
I don't know whether I'm being optimistic, but that's certainly where I sit at the moment. Is that everything's tracking for us to have a reasonably length season, and hopefully lessen the impact of the COVID situation.
And then for the actual clubs, as you say, they're really groups of people rather than having physical infrastructure. So the actual clubs themselves should be able to weather.
Yeah, I would have thought so. There are clubs that do have, some physical facilities and stuff. A lot of them, might be attached to a local rugby club or something like that. And so they sort of fall under that. It's probably more the rugby club that owns the facilities, etc., or manages them. And then there's a netball club associated with that. There are some standalone netball clubs too. But yeah, by and large, because it's groups of people, they should be able to weather the storm fairly well.
That's very good. So then, let's move on to then the Northern Mystics. We've obviously you had that one game at the beginning of the season where you beat Northern Stars 55-59. So you started off the right way and sat third in the table after one round.
Well, I'm pleased to say I'm undefeated as a CEO of a semi-professional sports team.
So we've been told the return date, but there's been no news yet around the rest of the schedule. Are we expecting to see basically the full schedule, or is it going to be trimmed down? And will that first game be included? Do we know?
Yep. So the first game is being included. I'm pleased to say, since because of it, we had that great win. So yes, that will be included. The intention is to run the full season out, and that draw is due for release very soon. Just some final bits and pieces being worked through at the moment, but the intention is to run a full 3-round competition over a 10-week period, all in one venue at the Auckland Netball Centre, with all the precautions that are required in the current environment.
Cool. So 19th of June, folks, is when it's back, and I'm assuming that all games are going to be on Sky for people to watch. But
Yep.
No people actually allowed at the venue to watch it.
No one at the venue. So a lot of restrictions around that. I don't even think I'll get to go. I'll be watching on Sky as well. Sky Sport 3 is the home of netball, and so those games every week. I think it's either 4 or 5 games across Friday through Monday in the evening. So there'll be plenty of netball viewing through June, July, August.
So there you go, folks. You've got that. We've got the NBL coming back 5 nights a week as well, and then also Super Rugby on your Saturday and Sunday afternoons. So get in front of the box over the weekend, because there's going to be plenty of sport for you to watch and to enjoy, and for us actually to talk about on New Zealand Sport Radio finally at last, rather than just talking about what might happen. So how have you been engaging with the Mystic supporters whilst you've not been playing? Have you been having sort of various Facebook challenges or Twitter or Snapchat? What's your kind of your main channel, and how have you been talking to them?
Yeah, so our I guess social media obviously plays an important part in that, and our main use there is through Facebook and Instagram, and we've done various different chat sessions, videos, competitions, all the different ways to try and engage with the fan base, keep them up to date with what the team's been up to, what kind of training the players have been doing by themselves initially, and now this week they're allowed to get back and train together as a team for the first time, which is exciting for them. And then we obviously direct contact with our member base through emails and that sort of thing to keep them up to date with everything that's been going on as best we can, and trying to I guess if I take the take the positives, it's been trying to think differently. What can we do to engage with our fans, to expand that fan base, and to let them know what the Mystics are up to. No home games for us this season. What does that mean, and how can we keep people engaged through the season when they can't turn up and support in person? So it's been challenging, and we're still working through some of those things. But there's also been some really positives come out of all of this as well.
So have you, as you say, perhaps potentially been able to grow your social media fan base? Have you seen that more engagement with people sort of being sat at home with nothing to do?
Yeah, a little bit. I have, to be honest, I haven't looked at the numbers to see whether we've had a spike there or not. So you've prompted me to do that. I better go and have a look. But we've had a reasonably well engaged fan base for a while, but definitely love to get more. And in a normal situation, we would be looking to get them in and buying tickets to come to the home games and watch the Mystics in person. So Obviously, can't do that this season. And so, that fan engagement becomes even more important, through those social channels.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And has it been mainly as part of the sort of under Mystics brand, or have you been also looking at running sort of training sessions for the grassroots people, saying, hey, here's how you can keep your netball going during the lockdown?
Yeah, so through the Netball Northern social, I guess, channels, we cover off both do it, and Netball New Zealand have come in behind with things like the NetFit programming, which provides opportunities for people to look at fitness videos and how to train and that sort of stuff specific for netball, so that people can watch those, follow along, get in and do their different training drills, how you can train for netball, in the early days of lockdown, how you could train by yourself, what different skills you could do to hone your skills when you're on your own. And then as things have loosened up, we've been able to get back on with some online coaching videos, umpiring videos from that side of thing to keep people upskilled. And then as we move closer to being able to have that sort of in-person training, how does training have to be different? What do you have to do around your hygiene protocols, your contact tracing, all that sort of stuff to enable a safe practices to be to be undertaken, and keep everyone safe as they get back into those group training sessions. So we've been doing a lot of work with Netball New Zealand, with all our centres around that side of things, to make it as clear as possible, so that everyone understands what's required, and they can get back on court and really enjoy their netball.
Cool. So I'm going to jump around a bit here. You mentioned a few times that the Mystics are a semi-professional team, which basically means that the athletes are sort of contracted for that window and paid to play, but paid to be kind of pretty much full time during the actual window of the ANZ Premiership. But then outside of that, they are studying, have a job, etc. With that window having shifted, have any of your athletes had a problem that it sort of impacts their jobs and not being able to, so they can't continue and going to have to miss out on the season, or have they all managed to make up arrangements?
So far so good in that regard. It's not quite like that, in that the window, the players can continue to work throughout the year. So the training schedules that are in place for the teams are such that it allows the players to continue working on a part-time basis throughout the year, so or study for that matter. And so, there's restrictions around training between 9 and 4 on certain days of the week, so that people can have, a sort of a day job, if you like. And so that model, I guess, continues even with the extension of the season into August, when it would normally finish in July. It's not like we say you're purely netball and Mystics for a 3-month period and you can't do anything else. It continues, throughout the year in terms of what they can do. Obviously, at the end of the season, they can ramp up their work hours and get stuck into more. So, and there is an impact from a study point of view. A number of players were looking to do full-time study, from that second half of a university year, for example. Whereas they might have been doing part-time in the first half of the year, second half of the year they'll go into full-time. So there might have to be some bit of juggling around for some people to try and fit netball that's still going at that time of year.
Okay, but all the players have managed to juggle their different demands to keep playing, which is good news on the whole. And the final piece that we don't kind of often talk about or think about is that referee development. How much effort do you do it, or is that controlled centrally, and how much effort and time does that take? Are you putting into your referees and the next generation of referees?
Fair bit. So we have umpires in this case in netball. So we have an umpire development officer whose role is around the development of in that umpire space. and they liaise through to Netball New Zealand's national umpire development person. And so there's a good structure in place there to provide those umpiring, upskilling opportunities, to encourage new people into umpiring, and right through, so that right through down to the young kids starting out have some level of umpires. Generally, like most sports, you start with a parent and then, or an older sibling or someone that umpires, and then as you get up through the ranks, you start to get properly trained and qualified umpires, and then obviously through into the ANZ where they have all the skills required to take it on at that level.
Now, in recent years, we've seen that sort of rugby, football globally have started to have full-time professional umpires at the very, very top. Are the international umpires for netball, are they full-time, or are they still having to juggle?
No, it's very still, netball is still largely a pretty amateur sport, and umpires, I guess, fall into that category. They get support for what they do, but they're all will have their own day job, so to speak, and then netball umpiring on the side. We'd love to get to that position at some stage, but like the semi-professional nature of the players, it would be great to be able to offer them more and have them more involved. But we've got to be mindful of the financial situation of the sport and be careful about how we do things, particularly now with the massive financial impact that COVID-19 has had on the sport. And that may change the model going forward. We're just going to have to work that through and see what's going to be best for the sport moving forward.
Now, I've talked to some of the rugby provinces, and we've seen it in the news that obviously New Zealand Rugby having to say it looks like they're making about half their staff redundant. How is the Northern Zone financially? Also with the Central Zone, I think it was into voluntary redundancy.
Mainland.
Sorry, Mainland Zone went to voluntary redundancy. How is the North Zone set up financially? How have you managed to cope with all this?
Yeah, it's certainly been tough. There's no getting around that. We had to very early on make some tough decisions around cancelling a number of contractors that we had doing various roles on a part-time, in a sort of contract basis. So we had to put an end to those. Unfortunately, we've all the staff have been on reduced pay throughout this period. And they've been just brilliant with their attitude and continued investment in what they do to provide the support, despite doing it for less money in effect. So it's been a challenge to work through that. The support from government has been helpful in terms of the wage subsidy that we've been able to get. The announcement that the government made last week or on Sunday, I think it was, on the 265 million investment in sport. We get to see how that's going to roll out, but that will hopefully provide some benefit longer term. And there's been other little bits and pieces of funding that have been available to help us offset some of the decline. But I'd say for the financial year, it's probably going to be a 30% to 40% hit on our revenue for the year. And as a non-profit, we can't afford to take that. We can't afford to lose that level of money. So we've got to cut our expenses to be able to hopefully have a break-even sort of situation at the end of the financial year.
Right. So you don't have you're not allowed, as a non-profit, are you allowed to build up a rainy day fund or a reserve fund? Or?
Yeah, we are. Unfortunately, over the years, for various reasons, that hasn't happened. And so, that hasn't helped, in that our reserve base is just not there to sort of fall back on. And so that's certainly the intention, from here on, is to chip away at that and make small profits each year, so that over a period of time we can start to build some reserves back up again. So if something like this, touch wood, never happens, but if it did, we're in a better position to weather the storm next time round than what's happened this time.
Cool. Yeah, well, thank you very much for that. Is there any sort of messages from the Northern Zone or the Mystics that I've not sort of picked up on yet, or drawn out from you?
Well, no, I just say, if you're interested in getting involved in netball, then please do. The season will be starting soon from at a grassroots level. So get down to your local club and centre and get involved. And if Auckland based, get in behind and support the Mystics and obviously the other franchises, through when the ANZ Premiership starts in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, and look, it's one of the things you kind of touched on at the very beginning. That you said you played netball as well. Look, it's not just a female sport. There's guys can play as well. So do get in touch with about getting playing. If you want to be a guy, you can get involved either as a player, as a coach, as a umpire, or even just as a social secretary for your club. There's lots of roles that clubs will need help with over these next few months. So yeah, do get down and get involved. Thank you very much for your time, Phil. Everybody, please do like our Facebook page, New Zealand Sports Radio. If you prefer to listen, then search for New Zealand Sports Radio on your favourite podcatcher. We're on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, all of those wonderful places. And join us for the next long talk.